IVM.
Hello folks, welcome to The Last Brand Standing presented by Bank of Baroda. It's a podcast where we discuss some of the most iconic brand rivalries from the Indian marketplace. We are your two hosts, Anupam and Ambi, and this episode is also it's about two-wheelers because we are going to talk about two rival brands, Hero Honda and Bajaj Auto.
Ambi, what can our listeners expect? Tell me.
Well, Anupam, this is a battle which goes back to the early 80s and it continued for almost 10 years. So this is going to be an exciting long ride on many mobikes and many scooters. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, folks, that is Hero Honda, as it was called then. Today, it's called Hero Moto versus Bajaj Auto. Well, both companies are competitors even today, right? But this episode is the Marvel Comics universe, the MCU, the origin story of their battle. Yes, scooters versus motorcycles, motorcycles versus scooters. Boy, oh boy, it doesn't get any bigger than this. One of the biggest consumer shifts in India. This was a time when people only had scooters. This is the origin story in a lot of ways of motorcycles and of Hero Honda. So let's get to it. The first part of this episode, we look at the overview. And for that, let us go back to the 70s. Oh boy. Right. So Bajaj Auto, peak form in the 70s. It started as it used to import 2 and 3 wheelers from Piaggio back in 1948. In 1972, Bajaj introduced its first scooter brand, the Chetak. Chetak, folks, was legendary back in the 70s. The popularity was so high that it seems its resale value was greater than its purchase price. Can you believe that? Buying a scooter at 100 and selling it at 120, it was possible. Why? License, Raj. Yeah. India didn't allow manufacturers to enhance their production capacity whenever they wanted, which you can today. So demand for the scooter, for the Chetak, shot through the roof year after year. And at one point of time, the Chetak had something like a 10-year waiting period. Okay, this was the Bajaj Auto of that era, led by Rahul Bajaj. Now, if you think that Rajiv Bajaj is outspoken, we're going to talk about the outspokenness of Rahul Bajaj at that point of time. Okay, so Bajaj had it had a monopoly in two-wheelers. Motorcycles didn't exist in a big form that way. If you're getting married, the dowry was a scooter. Maybe if you watch movies of that era, you'll find families giving the Bajaj Chetak other families. And that was the socialist era. It was considered as India's car on two wheels. So that was Bajaj Auto of the 70s and of the 80s. And of course, when India opened up, this is not the 91 reforms, by the way. In the 80s, India had some amount of reforms and foreign collaborations were allowed for two-wheelers. So a whole host of new companies came into the two-wheeler segment and most of them went straight into motorcycles. And along with them, they got new technology. So who are these players? All the big brands of Japan. So Suzuki came in with TVS, Kawasaki came in with Bajaj, Yamaha came with Escorts, and Honda came with the Hero Group and for the motorcycle, and for scooters it went with Kinetic at that point of time back in the 80s. Talking of Honda, well, time to introduce our second player, Hero Honda or Hero Moto Corp as it is called today. But back then, Hero Honda was established as a joint venture company, and joint venture is equity stake. Remember, that's the difference between the relationship between Kawasaki and Bajaj and Hero and Honda. In case of Hero Honda, both partners held an equal stake in Hero Honda. So there was Honda Motors of Japan and the Hero Group, which is led by the Munjal family in Delhi. The Munjal family and Honda Motors of Japan had a long, fruitful partnership. Started in 83 and ended only in 2010. Honda today in India, of course, is a totally different two-wheelers company. We'll probably get onto that later in the show. Now, this joint venture between the Hero Group and Honda Motors, which was called Hero Honda, was so successful that in 1987, Hero produced its 100,000th motorcycles. And guys, 1 lakh motorcycles in 1987 is a big deal for someone who just started off in 83. And motorcycles, guys, are becoming really mainstream. Okay, really mainstream. For those of you who remember that era, Subhash Ghai had a movie called Hero, which had, of course, the famous, the very legendary, the very macho man, Jackie Shroff on the famous Yamaha Rajdut 350, RD 350 as it was called. So obviously Bajaj was feeling the heat. Come on, you have a monopoly in scooters and slowly you're seeing motorcycles come in. It had Kawasaki as a partner. So it was not like they didn't have a presence in motorcycles. It had the KB100 which they launched in 1986. They launched the Sunny in 1990. In 1991, they launched the 4S Champion. 97, the Box. So they threw a lot of motorcycles at Hero Honda. Nothing really stuck. The 4-stroke technology that Hero Honda had was huge. Okay, it was a game changer. You're talking of, motorcycle that gives you a superb average, runs so good that they had an ad campaign for that, which Ambi will take you through. So by the turn of the century, okay, now we're talking about the late 90s and early 2000s, motorcycles finally overtook scooters. It's a huge change in the two-wheeler industry, and Bajaj felt the heat. And at this point of time, Ambi, I'm going to give this to you. We have Bajaj goes from a monopoly to seeing its market share go away. You had Hero Honda. It started in 83. It does 1 lakh motorcycles in 87. It went to 1 million in 94, somewhere in the 90s. How did this happen? Bajaj goes from a waiting list, to seeing Hero Honda take it on head on. What was this battle like? It produced some massive ad campaigns. Take us through this entire thing.
Thanks, Anupam. That was a great setup. So you started the journey from the 70s, and I remember getting into IIT in 1972, and my friend Girish had a Bajaj scooter. I think it was a reddish orange Bajaj scooter. And when we graduated in 1977, he still had the same scooter. But that's fine. But what's more interesting was in those 5 years, the only thing he did with that bike was put gas and hawa. That's it. It was such a fantastic scooter that in spite of the roughest of rough use, it just lasted 5 years. And all kinds of guys used to borrow the bike and go around, but it was so scooter was, and Bajaj was really a fantastic scooter, and they deserved, the kind of idol worship they had. Like you said, child is born, you book a Bajaj scooter. Because if it is a boy, when he grows up, when he's 18 years old, he'll get a license, he can drive the scooter. If it's a girl child, lo behold, but then you book a scooter because, when she gets married, that can be given away as dowry. Right? So scooter was something, and those days, the 70s, there were a few other two-wheeler brands. There was, of course, Lambretta, which was kind of there, but it vanished. Again, a decent scooter, again, an Italian brand. Then, of course, there were 3 mobile players, right? There was Java, which became SD. There was Rajdut, and there was, Royal Enfield and Bullet. And like you said, they were all very small players compared to Bajaj.
They're expensive bikes, I'm guessing. These are big, bulky bikes. It's not something that the middle class at that point of time would see. Ambi, one more thing. I just thought of this when you spoke about scooters. See, this is the India of the 70s and the 80s where the quality of roads was not good. You didn't have longer roads to connect you from city to city like you have the expressway now. You can't even, you just take your car and go. At that point of time, mobility was either public transport or the scooter. Am I right in that?
Absolutely. So, and somehow the Indian middle class felt that scooter was a safer bike to ride because the feeling was it was a low center of gravity, right? And Bajaj did face competition, but much later, 1989, they faced competition from LML Vespa, which came and fought them by saying that our scooter is better balanced, etc. But we'll not go there. Indian middle class loved scooters. Scooter was seen as a very safe, very reliable, very trustworthy two-wheeler for the whole family. So the classical image of a father, mother, and 2 kids on a scooter is almost etched in everyone's mind. With one kid standing in the front holding the handle, father and the mother holding a smaller child on her lap. So this was the India of the 70s and the 80s. And like you said, the Indo-Japanese bikes entered in 1983. And there was Kawasaki Bajaj, which was kind of a stepchild of the Bajaj scooter company then. There was Yamaha with
Escorts,
Suzuki with TVS.
With TVS, yeah.
I had a long chat with the team which worked on this. So I spoke to Rahul Kansal, my friend who was running the advertising account out of Ulka, Delhi at that time. So in 1983-84, when the Hero Honda motorcycle was launched, the first burst of advertising they did was talking of all the benefits, saying Japanese technology, very reliable, and then 4-stroke, and then fuel efficiency of 80 kilometers a liter. But then when they started observing the consumer was buying Hero Honda for primarily one reason. And that one reason was fuel efficiency. So around 1985, they said, look, we can't say too many things. There are too many Japanese bikes out there. Let us go after one benefit. And then, a lot of times, especially when you're launching a new glitzy product, both clients and the agency get carried away. They start putting everything into the ad. So it has got great technology. It has got a great engine. It's got great stability. It's got great looks. And it delivers great fuel efficiency. But fortunately, they said, no, let's focus on. So this decision was taken sometime in 1985. And 1986, they said, we will go after only fuel efficiency. And Vikram Oberoi was a copywriter in the agency. And later he went on to become ad filmmaker, wrote the line, fill it, shut it, forget it.
Wow.
And you can search for the ad on YouTube, you'll find it. And, when I was talking to Rahul Kansal, who worked on the account, he said, look, the ad was so simple. It's almost as if the ad was shot with a handycam. It was a very simple ad, a guy going on a ride. And then finally, and it says, fill it. And he goes to the petrol pump. He drives past the petrol pump, fill it, shut it, forget it. And I remember this, I was that time, I always had a ESD. So I was that time a brand manager in Boots. And I was, coming out of the office, getting ready to get onto my bike. And my colleague Girish Rangan had a Hero Honda CD100. So at that time, the campaign had just broken, I think. Fill it, shut it, forget it. So I asked him, what kind of fuel efficiency do you get? He said, Ambi, I don't know. Because I really don't know when I put petrol and when it gets over, it goes on and on and on.
Wow.
Right? So suddenly, India, which is a very, very economy conscious, who used to count every penny. So Bajaj scooter used to give 30 kilometers, 35 kilometers a liter. ESD used to give 20 or even less. Bullet used to get even less. Here was a bike which gave 80 kilometers a liter. I mean, this was amazing. And what they did smartly was they kept hammering it with the line, fill it, shut it, forget it. And I'm told at that time, the agency had a single point person to get every clearance from. It was Ramakant Munjal.
Munjal, of course.
And he unfortunately passed away.
Too soon,
1991. And he was a guy who I think was taking the decision saying, look, let's go after just fuel efficiency and let's hammer this. And within 2 years, their sales took off, right? It took off and they kept increasing production. They kept going and Bajaj was cornered. Bajaj for a long time felt that, look, motorcycle will not affect the scooter. Scooter consumer is different. Motorcycle consumer is different. All that started happening.
So I want to just stop you there. And, I made a reference to Rahul Bajaj of that era. What was he like? That the same very, very brash, very, call it arrogant, call it confident, whatever it is. There's all kinds of statements that he used to make about, I don't need a dispatch department, or he said apparently that I don't need a marketing department, I have a dispatch department or something of that sort. When your product is selling that well, obviously you will have that. What is he like at that point of time?
I think, he's a product of that era. It's a product of that license era that you need to protect Indian industrialists from foreign invasion. And then, how do you protect us? You need to keep licenses, etc. So he was that, and in fact, when the liberalization happened in 91, he was one of the most vocal opponents.
The Bombay Club.
The Bombay. And in forums, 10 years ago, in a forum, he stood up and said that I was wrong. I believed that, but I was wrong. I think liberalization helped our economy, helped our country. I was wrong to fight it then. So I think he takes very strong views and he's got the guts to stand up and talk, right? So
let's go.
He was in denial. The company I think was in denial. And then in 1989 they said, look, we need to bring pride back into scooters, and they did this absolutely fantastic campaign done by Lintas, which was the Hamara Bajaj campaign. Again, listeners can search for it on YouTube. You can find those wonderful ads. That was broken in 1989. In fact, 1988 was the other big, I have this theory that, when you don't know what to say, you do this Mera brand Mahan kind of an ad. So all this kind of flows out of that, Mera Bharat Mahan, which was done by the government of India, which is the Mile Sur Mera Tumhara. So that is one whole school of thought. If you don't have anything to say, take your product and shoot it in different environment and say that Mera brand Mahan, and hopefully.
Was this the time of Tata Steel? We also make steel, or did that come
around that time. Tata Steel, I think slightly older, but I think Mera brand Mahan tha. And 1989 they did that, and that got a lot of recognition. It got
huge campaign, that whole thing about
big campaign, right?
Buland Bharat ki
Buland Tasveer, Hamara Bajaj, Hamara Bajaj. So it was very memorable, great campaign. In fact, someone went and launched something with their brand Hamara Bajaj, and Bajaj took them to court and said you can't use the term Hamara Bajaj. And they tried building this owner's pride. That was the time they were also being attacked by LML Vespa. So LML Vespa was coming in at the top, pricing their scooters more expensive, and the bottom was being eroded by Hero Honda CD100. They were under tremendous pressure. And in fact, I didn't realize that the Hero Honda Will It, Shut It, Forget It was really the nail on the coffin, because I was at a Pan IIT forum about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when R.L. Ravichandran, who was in Bajaj
at Auto,
time, he spoke about it. He said, look, the day we saw that campaign breaking, we realized the scooter's end is near, because suddenly the motorcycle started becoming the middle class man's vehicle. Till then, the motorcycle was a young bachelor's bike, and Hero Honda CD100 changed that. And with that, Will It, Shut It, Forget It, and the fuel efficiency story, they started appealing to the hardcore, the belly of the scooter business, which is the family man. And I didn't realize. I later spoke to him, and he said, "Yeah, I essentially believe that campaign." And they focused on fuel efficiency, and that caused our decline. Okay, and whatever we did, we couldn't bring those customers back. They were all leaving in large numbers. So I would say round one, Hero Honda CD100 came. They said a lot of things, and they figured out the one thing which will work is fuel efficiency, and they did that. Will It, Shut It, Forget It. And they kept hammering Will It, Shut It, Forget It. And then finally the citadel was broken. The middle class started abandoning scooters and started jumping onto a fuel efficient bike. Okay, and this is the first round of the battle, Anupam.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap this first part on this thing, that Bajaj also tried something, an ad campaign with a caliber. It was called Hudi Baba. I kind of have very vague memories of that somewhere, because this is also the time when Hero just piled on the advertising. They did the Hero Honda World Cup. It was called the Hero Cup. This was 1993. And sponsoring a World Cup is just about as big a statement as you can, put out there of your success and of your brand. So what was this Hudi Baba campaign about? I mean, Balki has a memory that I read about in the, on some site. What is that about?
They did a lot, right? They did Caliber, they did it, but I think they hit their stride with Pulsar, and I think we should talk about the next section how they got that right.
Yeah. So, folks, that is that was part one of this business battle, which went to Hero Honda, of course, because motorcycles were now somewhere around I think 2000 2001 is when motorcycles finally overtook scooters. Okay, in terms of unit sales. Remember that in India, unit sales is, it's a big thing. And even today, I think motorcycles probably outsell scooters. And there's we'll cover this in the next part about how when Bajaj left scooters, someone else actually took over that space and did pretty good on that. So we'll get on to all of that on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back to this episode. We are covering the two-wheeler battle between Hero Honda, as it was known then, Hero Moto, as it is known today, versus Bajaj Auto. This was motorcycles versus scooters. Round one went to Hero Honda because by the 2000s, motorcycles had overtaken scooters. Bajaj saw its monopoly vanish. At one point of time, the Chetak used to sell, used to have waiting list to now they were on the back seat on the motorcycles. But Bajaj Auto fought back. And we are going to get into that right now. So in the post-2000 era, once motorcycles had overtaken scooters, Bajaj gradually moved their focus, their energy, their attention to product innovation. They saw what the market required. They probably saw a small gap that was out there that they could dominate. Remember that Hero Honda had a fantastic, almost monopoly situation in the 100cc bikes, the basic bikes, the CD100, the Splendor. Splendor, I think, at that point of time, probably even now was the largest selling motorcycle in the world. So Hero Honda had these massive and strong brands that sold really well. But I thought maybe there is a chance to go somewhere else in the what's called the CC, the capacity of a motorcycle. That's 100cc. They said, let's check out the higher range. So they entered the premium bike segment with the Bajaj Pulsar. This is back in the 2000s. Okay, so it put in a 150cc Bajaj Pulsar, 180cc Bajaj Pulsar. They even got the Bajaj Eliminator, 175cc, 5-speed, a chopper as it is called. It was only so, they really did well in that. In 2006, they actually stopped manufacturing the Bajaj Chetak. By that time, the Bajaj Chetak had sold 1 crore. That's 10 million units. So Bajaj figured that they will get into the upgradation thing. They changed the entire branding. And Ambi is going to walk you through this entire process. Ambi, the Bajaj of 2000s. Okay, I think by this point of time, probably Rajiv Bajaj had taken a bigger role. Both the brothers were there at that point of time, looking at different aspects of Bajaj Auto. So let's go on with this phase of Bajaj Auto.
Okay, I think what happened was I always wondered, why did Bajaj vacate the scooter market? And I'm told that they did try making a 4-stroke scooter, 4-stroke engine to drive the scooter to improve fuel efficiency. And I don't think they were successful at that. I'm told they even tried an auto start for a scooter, and that also did not succeed. Bajaj Kawasaki was a bit of a non-starter. It had very little traction. And so suppose they were in a bit of a tough spot in the late 90s. And LML Vespa came, made some noise, and even they started diminishing. So the feeling was maybe, and Kinetic Honda was having a very limited scooter appeal. So I think it was very interesting, that Rajiv Bajaj took a call that we cannot ride these two horses together. We're going to fall. I don't know, I always keep wondering, if he was not the founder's son, would the board have approved this? That let's abandon scooters and let's focus all our energies on motorcycles. It's a bold call. It's you may today call it even foolhardy. So it kind of reminds me of what Andy Grove did. Intel. All of you listeners know that Andy Grove is the founder of Intel, a great company. When they started they were actually making memory chips in the beginning. And I'm told the story is that, they knew that in memory chips, the margins were going down, down, down. And they had to think of how to change the company dramatically. And they said, and then there's an interesting story. I don't know how far it's true. Andy Grove with the entire board said, okay, guys, we've all been fired. The company is doing badly. We've all been fired. So they all 8 of them leave the room and they say, okay, now we've been hired. Let's go back in. And they go back in and they take a decision. We'll stop making memory chips. We will make microprocessors. And of course, that changed the fortunes of Intel, right? So in almost a similar kind of a dramatic move, Rajiv Bajaj said, we'll stop making scooters. We'll focus all our energy on motorcycles. And in the early days, they tried fighting, CD100 with their own 100cc motorcycle. And somewhere, I think, they focus and they say, look, we need to segment this market differently. And they hit upon the idea that we should go after more exciting bike. And
it's just, sorry for stopping you there. It's interesting, because 1999 May was when Honda came in with the scooter. The Activa was actually launched around about that time. I think by 2001, it was already, kind of doing well. So I just thought maybe, his call to exit scooters in 2006, he saw that it was not working, maybe at that point of time, so I thought that maybe that also might have played into his decision, because it took a long while for Honda also to revive the scooter segment, because the Activa went on and became a pretty big hit. I think by 2008, 2010, it was among the largest selling scooters. And that's a separate story on its own. But I'm just saying, maybe that could have been a decision. Let's get back to this entire story of...
let's stay with that. I think Honda Activa was launched in
1999 is what
99, right? It was launched in May 1999.
Yes.
But look at it. Kinetic Honda had been in the market from 1984.
Yeah.
Right? And so probably Bajaj might have felt that this button start scooter may not, if Kinetic Honda had been struggling with this for 5 years or 6 years or 8 years and they're not gone very far, is there really a future for a button start scooter?
And gearless, remember, the whole thing for the scooter, for Activa was the gearless thing. Because if you remember the old scooters, oh good God, doing that 2 up, 2 down, first, second, third, fourth, and that's
so probably they felt that, maybe gearless scooters, India will never accept gearless scooters because gearless scooters automatically means less fuel efficiency.
Lesser average,
Kinetic Honda gives a lesser. So probably they felt that, look, they took a call, and I think, right, wrong, we don't know, but
it's a different thing,
But they took a call that I think in the year 2000 or so. Actually, by end 1990, I think they probably decided not to waste any more time developing more scooters, and they put all their money behind developing exciting bikes. And Bajaj Pulsar was a superstar success and they also had new technology. They invested in this twin spark technology, which revolutionized biking.
DTSI.
And twin spark technology. And they said, look, not only India, now let's start exporting. And they started exporting their bikes to probably so many, I think 30 or 40 countries they export their bikes. And interestingly, around that time, different things are happening in the two-wheeler market. There was Royal Enfield, which was struggling. They ended up selling the company to Eicher. And whom did Eicher hire to run Royal Enfield?
I don't know. Who was that?
R.L. Ravichandran.
Oh, yeah, of course. Come on. Who knows two-wheelers better than him?
And R.L. Ravichandran said, we need to do one up. So he took the brand up in terms of imagery, improved the quality of the Bullet, said, it's really going to be sold on word of mouth. And if you remember, about 10 years ago, there was a 1-year waiting list on a Bullet, right? And he managed to create that old halo around Bullet, created a whole new market, the 350cc. So there was the CD 100 at 100, there was Pulsar at 130, 150, and then there was Royal Enfield at 350, and then Honda Activa comes as a gearless, button start scooter, and they created a market which was actually there for Kinetic Honda for taking. But they created a market for that, and I think what happened probably was also they benefited because of the stop-go traffic in cities. Changing gear is a problem. Second, women started using scooters in big numbers, and Bajaj had gone away, and then Kinetic Honda was actually originally seen as a women's scooter. Kinetic Honda was nowhere to be seen. Activa came, and Activa actually became phenomenal success. It became literally the kind of a unisex two-wheeler for the family. So there could be a motorcycle which the father uses, and then the wife and the daughter and the son use the Activa. So Activa, at one time, in fact, Activa became, I think, the number one selling two-wheeler or something like that.
In the
last 5 years. What has happened is that we've had a real explosion in the type of two-wheelers our country has produced. And happy to say, while there is Suzuki, there is Yamaha, there is Piaggio, all of them have come. Indian manufacturers, whether it's TVS, Hero, Bajaj, have continued to create a very vibrant, two-wheeler ecosystem in our country. And Bajaj changed its game and went on to become a very successful two-wheeler company, high-priced products, very healthy margin. And I'm not sure what is their market cap. Maybe their market cap is even higher than that.
Today, of course, it is. You remember anything on the branding campaign back then? See, because I'll just take our listeners through how the motorcycle segment evolved. Okay, Ambi just made a point about the two-wheelers. On the motorcycle side, folks, there were 3 segments. Okay, what was called the commuter segment, which is basic 100cc bikes. And the CD100 just totally ruled that. Okay, you just couldn't take on a Splendor in that range. this was how the motorcycle segment started. And then, like Ambi said, you then had slightly higher price motorcycles. So if I remember correctly, the CD100 and Splendor would be around about 42,000. This is back in the 2000s, by the way. Towards 50,000, then you would have what was called the executive segment, which would have maybe a 125cc. Okay, this came in, if I remember correctly, Yamaha actually managed to put in a bike pretty well out there, but it couldn't really succeed. When you've got a Bajaj on one side and Hero Honda on the other, Yamaha tried, but they couldn't. But they created a nice segment out there, which was the best of both worlds. And then you had the luxury segment, which was just Pulsar. You just had Pulsar out there. Hero Honda took a while to get its act together out there, but eventually they did. They launched the CVZ. Okay, and they kind of also had a good presence. So that was a nice. So remember that in each of these segments, the commuter, the executive, and the luxury, you had brands fighting against each other. Mostly Hero Honda, mostly Bajaj Auto. TVS also did very well with this model called the Victor. Okay, back in the 2000s. But again, this was largely Hero Honda versus Bajaj Auto. And we're going to wrap up this segment on that note that Hero Honda really owned the motorcycle market out then. Bajaj fought its way back. They did seriously well on two segments. The first was the luxury segment, where it established itself with a Pulsar. And you would say that even the 150cc Pulsar, I think the largest selling between the two, made a really good mark in terms of volumes. You would think that something that expensive would not do really great on volumes. But remember, folks, this is the 2000s. India's road network had improved. India's aspirations had improved. The economy was doing well. People were looking for something which went one level above the basic motorcycle. And the Pulsar filled that gap really well. Ambi, distinctly ahead. I want to wrap up this episode talking about Bajaj's entire journey. You have Hamara Bajaj in 1989, and almost 15-20 years later, distinctly ahead. What was this brand change like? How did Bajaj reinvent itself?
I think it was a bold call to say that we will stop making scooters and we will start making aspirational motorcycles. And I know, if you remember, the Bajaj journey has been a nice, interesting curve, right? For a company which said that, look, we don't believe in advertising. There'll be a waiting list always. And from there, they learned how to advertise. And I think Hamara Bajaj was an outstanding campaign, right? And then there is, no, we will get out of scooters. Let's focus on motorcycles. And when they went into motorcycles, they knew that there was a giant sitting in the 100cc, what you call the economy segment, the commuter segment. And they said, look, we can't compete with these guys. They have the volume, they have the scale, they have the pricing, they have the advantage. So classical marketing, let's position our bike aspirationally, let's give more to the consumer, and therefore we'll make more margins. We started making more margin. They invested that in technology, and they developed, better technology, the twin spark, etc., etc., etc. And they managed to actually do very well, right? And they actually got commuters, the executive segment to accept their bike, and they managed to come out of this. Otherwise, can you imagine you stop making a product which was 90% of your sale and then you actually succeed? It's an outstanding example of turning around and abandoning something which you are very good at doing, latch on to a new horse and learn to ride that horse and ride it very well. In the middle, I think they parted company with Kawasaki. There were court cases against, their technology, double spin park, etc. And also quietly, they started exporting their bikes. And I think their bikes are now exported to a large part.
The Bajaj motorcycle on the export front is a big success story. And folks, we're going to go through the lessons on the last part of this episode. We're going to get into all of that on the other side of this break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back to this episode. Hero Honda, as it was called then, versus Bajaj Auto, motorcycles versus scooters. We've covered the ground so far that Bajaj Auto went from a monopoly in scooters to carving its own niche in motorcycles. Entire journey, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Hero Honda, of course, just became a huge powerhouse in motorcycles. In 2010, it parted ways with Honda Motorcycles of Japan. And today you've got Honda on its own, HMSI as it's called, with the Activa and a few other motorcycle brands. You've got Hero MotoCorp as it is known today. Again, a very large motorcycle company. You've got Bajaj Auto, which does two-wheelers. It's got motorcycles. It's got three-wheelers as it had then. It's made a very good name for itself in exports also. In this final part of this episode, we are going to talk about lessons. Ambi, let's start with this. From a branding and advertising perspective, okay, what makes two-wheelers so unique? Okay, it's a consumer category, but it's not like your detergents and your washing powders and your biscuits. It's a very cool category. Globally also, motorcycles and scooters have this strange appeal. Brand image is very important to two-wheelers. So let's start from here. Why or how is brand image so important for two-wheelers? And from a manufacturer's perspective, how important is it for it to stand apart? Because we know that ad campaigns were really important for Hero Honda, for Bajaj Auto. Tell us from a branding and advertising perspective, what are the lessons out here?
I think we keep whenever we do advice to clients is that you need to stay focused on what you want to do. And I think the success of Hero Honda CD100 it really points towards the fact that instead of making 5 or 6 different claims, they focused on one claim, which was fuel efficiency, and they brought it alive with a very evocative campaign on "Fill it, shut it, forget it." And the campaign, like I said, is a very simple. The television ad or the print ad, very very simple stuff, but it said it so well that it really appealed to the consumer and started creating a major movement from scooters to motorcycles. I know, like lesson number 1, write your strong positioning statement and stick to that. The compared to an FMCG product, motorcycles or any durables are a little more involvement. So consumer may come and try a deo or might try a soap, but a motorcycle, you need to offer benefits. You need to offer significant rational benefits. And Hero Honda managed to do that with that CD100 because they offered significant rational benefit, which was 80 kilometers per liter. And later when Bajaj came back, they also tried their 100cc, etc. But finally they succeeded really dramatically with Pulsar because they were offering a much superior engine and much superior performance. And then they created this whole category of a more powerful 150cc kind of a bike. And TVS is somewhere in the middle got lost, but they also came back and they started developing more and more exciting bikes. And as a result, today, if I were to say one regret is that, none of our Indian manufacturers could capture the gearless scooter phenomenon. They missed that on out and they allowed, Honda free ride with Activa, which is today a huge bestseller. So if you look back 30 years ago, Hero is still there doing very well. Bajaj is still there doing very well. TVS still there doing very well. Eicher, Royal Enfield still there doing well. 4 basically Indian companies have continued to do well. Yes, there is foreign competition, right? There is Honda, there is Suzuki, there is Yamaha, there is Piaggio, there is Harley Davidson, there is BMW, there is Triumph, and I can go on and on. But in spite of which, I think the motorcycle segment is a great example of Indian companies succeeding on a global scale. I was reading something recently saying, look, if we can succeed in a manufacturing industry, and we did it the classical way, right? Produce good products, sell them very well to the domestic consumers, perfect, improve your product, which is what Bajaj did, perfect, improve your product, and then take the same product abroad and you will be able to sell it. So Bajaj did that very well, and now I think Royal Enfield, is going to do that. They're going to be exporting it around the world. And last I heard was a couple of years ago, Royal Enfield or Eicher's market cap overtook that of Harley Davidson. That's amazing, right? So I think it's a combination to succeed. You have to marry product development, innovation, technology with smart marketing. And in the case of CD100, Hero Honda did that very well. They combined a 4-stroke engine, 80 kmpl, with a very powerful line, fill it, shut it, forget it. In the case of Pulsar, Bajaj managed to do that very well. An exciting engine, exciting drive, and Pulsar's campaign was always very edgy, very appealing to the younger mobile guy. TVS somewhere has kind of done a little bit of everything. They had that Scooty, which is a pretty big seller. They've got a mobile. They have a presence in Scooty. They have a presence in mobile.
I just realized, the Activa came up in 99 and all the way it's become Such a massive seller. What? Zero marketing? I don't remember a single ad campaign for Honda Activa. What happened there?
They came in at the time when Kinetic Honda was exiting. So Kinetic Honda, in a sense, had seeded the market for a gearless scooter.
Sure.
And Kinetic Honda had a lot of product quality issues. And I think Honda was not giving them technology or something like that. And in India, Honda has a huge halo of fuel efficiency. And that got further strengthened by their car brand, which is Honda Civic, right? Honda Civic offers...
Honda City, Honda Civic, and Honda Accord.
Honda City Honda City offers some absurd fuel efficiency, right? I remember the first version of Honda City was offering something like 18 or 19 kilometers, something like that, which was amazing because of, so there is a big halo that Honda has engine technology, and that engine technology gives fuel efficiency. So I think when Honda came in with Honda Activa, they had a whole lot of a nice halo around them. And they came with that scooter, and it was a very good scooter, and they kind of changed the market. And they created or recreated the scooter market once again, because I used to wonder, why are people buying a scooter? But the point is, in today's stop-go traffic in cities, a gearless scooter is a big advantage. And Honda managed to capture that. And I think exciting things are going to happen, because I think already I'm told e-rickshaw sales in India are higher than petrol rickshaw or diesel rickshaws. And I think a similar thing may happen in scooters. And I'm hoping that, Indian manufacturers take the lead on creating e-scooters. And then India can have a dominant presence in e-scooters around the world. So we've learned a lot of lessons working with very demanding, very tough Indian customers.
Because you need to get the pricing right, you need to get the efficiency right, and most importantly, you probably need to get the after-sales service. Like maybe for two-wheelers, they're not such a high-maintenance product, but it just helps to have maintenance also out there. Ambi, last couple of questions on this episode. So first is, any lessons here on fighting a competitor like Hero Honda? Back then, you tried everything. You threw motorcycle brands at them. You exited scooters. What really ticked, and how do as someone who's listening into the show and wants to enter into a big category that's dominated by a big player, what would your advice be to this guy? How do you take on the number one guy out there, as Bajaj successfully did?
I think they finally, managed to segment the market differently. If CD 100 is dominating the 100cc, you're not going to compete with him on 100cc and try and say, look, I cannot match his fuel efficiency, but I'll give you a better ride. No, you're not going to. So they managed to segment the market differently, create their own sub-segment, which is the 130, 150cc, and offer a great bike there. And that Hero Honda cannot come there because of various reasons. They're so focused on 100cc, and you went and did that. So if you're taking on a monolithic, huge competition, don't go for their belly. You're not going to succeed. You got to start eating at the edges. And that is what Bajaj learned to do. That they started chopping and churning at the edges, which is what, Royal Enfield did, right? Royal Enfield went after the top end. So you segment the market differently, and you position the brand differently, and you offer a different set of benefits, and you probably have a chance of success.
Great. Last question. So, two-wheelers is such a category that it is, so much is dependent on styling and appeal and aesthetics and looks and all that. Bajaj actually managed to probably divert the attention towards technology. So I'm just saying, we live in an era where technology is great. A lot of the apps today are backed by some great technology. But at the center of it is the customer experience, what they call UX or whatever it is. So how does one manage this, what I would call gentle balance between saying, listen, we are great in tech, but guess what? We also make a very good looking product. So from a branding and advertising perspective, how do you manage both these aspects to create a campaign and actually sell your product?
You need to, there is what is called point of parity and point of difference. So if you're selling a two-wheeler today, it has to be without problem. It has to have good styling. It cannot look ugly. You cannot have like the good old days, the electroplating will rust within a year or two. You can't do that. Today you can't do that. The consumer is smart. While you have point of parity, you need to decide what is your point of difference. CD 100 point of difference was fuel efficiency. Pulsar, the point of difference is technology and ride experience. For the ride experience, that coming from better technology. Royal Enfield's point of difference was a really, heavy, manly kind of a ride because of 350cc. But, Royal Enfield also had to get its act fixed because it was a poor product, very poor quality, and they had to fix the quality because you cannot afford to sell a poor quality product because the market is so competitive, right? The word of mouth is extremely important. And so you need to decide what is your point of parity, what is your point of difference, and then go after that, which is what Honda did with CD100, which is what very successfully Bajaj did with Pulsar. So understand your consumers, segment the market differently, give them a benefit which they can latch on to, but make sure your satisfactory level of performance across all the parameters for selecting a product. So your service cannot be lousy, your electroplating cannot be lousy, your engine cannot be faulty.
Some really valuable lessons there from a battle between, I think both were giants actually. So Hero Honda already had Honda with them when they started off in the 80s. So you can't call it a David versus Goliath battle. So Ambi, thank you so much for this, for sharing your knowledge and your insights on this episode.
Thank you, Anupam. That was a very enjoyable session. Thank you very much.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Last Brand Standing presented by Bank of Baroda. This is us, Anupam and Ambi, signing off for the last time on this show. Thanks everyone for joining us. And if you like this podcast, you can check out other interesting podcasts on the IBM network. Also, you can follow me, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter.
And me, Ambi Parmeshwaran, Ambi MGP on Twitter.